Alright, welcome to another review from Just Saying Film Reviews. I'm John.
I'm Brandon.
And before we start on our review today, we have developed a rating system. If the movie in question is absolutely terrible / unwatchable, for instance, movie 43, you'll hear this clip.
I fart in your general direction.
If we think the movie is worth checking out, but maybe not in theaters, maybe at a rental or Netflix or something like that, you will hear this clip.
That'll do, pig.
If the movie is a good, early showing, like a matinee, something, or a second run theater, something like that, you'll hear...
I'd buy that for $1.
If the movie is worth going to see right away for full price at any theater on the normal days, then you will hear this clip.
That's a knife.
And then finally, if the movie is absolutely incredible, we're just blown away by it, you will hear...
Yes! Yes! Oh, yeah!
Alright, Brandon, so what are we reviewing today?
Today we are reviewing the new Godzilla movie, which to my supreme disappointment did not end with a 30-story tall Bryan Cranston punching Godzilla in the face.
Yeah, that's nothing of that sort. Not only that, but much to the chagrin of Breaking Bad / Malcolm in the Middle / Bryan Cranston fans, you're not going to get a whole lot of him in this movie.
Yeah, he's in the beginning, and then by the end of the first act,
he's very much a tertiary character. He's not.
He kind of just steps out.
So this movie is carried. I say that in quotations, by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who was my conflict of interest seeing this film, because I only knew him from the Kick-Ass films and wanted to see what his acting chops were. And did he succeed?
Nope.
No, he fails to emote through most of this movie.
His flat acting did not bother me at first, because at least with some of the scenes he was doing, flat acting was fine. The scenes worked with flat acting. But when you start getting into some of the different situations they were getting into, and he's still using the same flat acting he's been using the whole time, it doesn't work.
The other big character in this film is played by Ken Watanabe. So, Ken Watanabe's role could easily be summed up by that stare you see in a movie where a character is contemplating, contemplating the situation and what humanity has done, or what, this situation has led to. That almost sheer dumbfounded expression. That's
pretty much it. That's all he does pretty much the entire movie, and becomes Godzilla's #1 fangirl.
Yeah, that was gonna say his only other role is kind of being like one of those like comic book nerds that just cannot shut up about how awesome Godzilla is. That's his exclusive role to this film, is telling us how great Godzilla is. I also think that while I applaud the movie for not spending too much time dabbling in the origins and trying to get right to the meat of it, I kind of skipped over the setup a little too fast, I would think. In fact, this movie had a lot of small arcs that don't really seem to mean anything, or certain lines or scenarios that either get solved rather instantaneously or are kind of a complete non-issue.
Trying to think of ways to talk about it without giving away spoilers.
I think we can go ahead and say like one without it being like a spoiler alert. At one point, they pair Aaron Taylor Johnson with this little Asian kid on a subway, and havoc ensues, as it tends to in kaiju flicks, and it ultimately goes absolutely nowhere. It really felt like the writers were like, man, we really need a suspense scene here, but Ford's kid isn't in this scene. I know, we'll throw him with another random kid so we can get like a cheap moment of suspense.
Yeah. and literally nothing amounts from that afterwards.
That happens quite a few times. Alright, so let's, that's pretty much most of the bad. Let's get to the very short list of the good.
The CGI in this movie was some of the top I've seen in movies of late. I'm not usually a huge fan of overly CGI'd movies. I don't like to see things with a whole bunch of CGI. But this particular case, I think they at least handled it pretty dang well.
Yeah, Brandon's usually extremely critical about CGI, so if he liked it, it has to be good. I honestly, it's not flawless. Like, obviously, eyes still look kind of weird in CGI, but for the most part, the monsters' skins looked like something that, like a model team, would have made, out of
Foam and
like just various
molds.
parts, and like painters and stuff. It looked very convincing, I think. And the destruction, it was never one of those movies where if you look far off in the distance, you see like poorly, quickly animated backdrops just to kind of fill the screen. Like, everything looked like real destruction.
They had taken some serious time and care with this CGI, knowing that the movie would have to have a ton of it, and knowing that it would be kind of part of the foundation of the movie, as any monster movie is going to have. So, with that, they did really well with.
I would like to point out that this being a kaiju movie with a couple different monsters, we kind of unanimously noticed there is still less destruction than Man of Steel in this film. Metropolis got destroyed more than, 3 major cities around the world in this film?
Yeah.
So...
yeah, it's sad when the villain monsters care more about buildings than Superman did.
Yeah, but another good thing about this movie is when Godzilla is on screen...
which is not a lot of the time.
Yeah, we actually didn't make that point earlier, so I'm going to have to interject myself. Yeah, there's a lot of times where they do that, let's not show Godzilla head on, but they do that with the fights, too.
Yes.
70% of the fights are either from a weird angle behind a building, or as some character's trying to escape the fight, you kind of see Godzilla's leg as he's pushing one of the other monsters.
Yeah. The whole first fight, you actually only catch it on a television across the world as someone is watching it, and then it cuts to the next day. So seriously, the first main fight,
you have no idea how it ends, but suddenly it just stops.
Yeah. All that you see is on this TV screen in about a maybe 10-15 second long scene.
It's used for a comedy bit, too.
Yeah.
And as Brandon astutely pointed out before, this monster had previously used an EMP to knock out electricity, yet somehow people were able to film this fight and for the news,
and fly the copter around to do it as well, because it was knocking things out of the sky.
Yeah, there were aerial shots. I don't understand how that happened, but and it always seemed like whenever there was destruction, there was like a news clip of it with like a little banner, like a ticker with like a headline title every time. Anyway, but when you finally actually do get to see some fighting, you can't help but want to cheer like it's a football game.
Oh yeah. For a movie based around monsters fighting each other, they do a good job with the monsters fighting each other.
Yeah, I feel like this movie was kind of just trying to give you something to lick your chops for. It's not really giving you the full big fight that you're expecting. It's more kind of just the appetizer, and if they turn this into a trilogy, it seems like this was definitely not the main course. They're kind of warming you up. But having said that, the movie, it's around a 2-hour runtime, wasn't it?
I think so.
We got out at about 9. It started at 7. Yeah. It didn't feel long. I will say, once it was going, it didn't feel rushed once the story actually started going, and it didn't feel long.
Yeah. They gave you enough of what was important sprinkled in there with the kind of the things that just didn't seem to go anywhere. But the things that didn't go anywhere, they were at least were kind of stuffed in there with things that did. So you still felt like you were moving forward instead of being stuck in a spot with a whole bunch of nonsensical crap. So at least it always felt like it was making progress towards something, which is more than I can say about a lot of movies.
So yeah, I mean, in summation, it's not a bad movie, and it's certainly one of the better Godzilla films.
Yeah.
But
it's definitely head and shoulders better than the '98 version, and it does not stand up to as strong as I would have hoped with, say, I was really hoping for something more along the lines of the original movie, which I adore. I think the original Godzilla movie was fantastic. And this follows more along those lines, but I'd say it's still stands closer to the numerous sequels.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that because those are cheesy. It's more Pacific Rim in the sense of, action laden than it is the original Godzilla.
Yeah.
So what you get at the end is a movie that didn't really know what it wanted to be at points. Had some questionable picks for characters or the actors portraying them, in the case of Aaron Taylor Johnson. And
Elizabeth Olsen, on the other hand, does fantastic. Her character, they just really super limited.
Yes.
With how much she could do. But her acting in it was superb and perfect, and she did everything she could with the subpar role that she was given.
Yeah. So, what you get at the end of the day is not a bad film. It's just because all the pieces were there to make a good film. I just don't think that there was a few key spots they needed to hit. I don't think they hit. So, Brandon, what are you going to rate this movie?
I give this movie a...
That'll do, pig.
Alright, and I am somewhere in between That'll Do, Pig and...
I'd buy that for $1.
Although I'm closer to...
I'd buy that for $1.
Not just because I love RoboCop, but, I did seek enjoyment from this film. I guess the last thing I did forget to mention I'd want to say is I could have done without the 3D.
Yeah, the 3D was kind of... I'm powerfully against 3D. Yeah. I do not like it. As I've seen... This is the second movie I've seen in 3D. The first one being Gravity. And I did not think it added that much in either situation. I liked the subtlety of this 3D a little more because it didn't feel like... A lot of times it didn't feel like they were using any 3D.
Yeah, it was definitely more of the depth 3D, but also I'm really sick of these theaters. This is not Godzilla's fault, by the way, but I'm really sick of these theaters with subpar 3D screens with the bad bulbs. It gets a little too dark for me. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's just parts where things don't seem distinguishable. But, well, I'm sure you might come away with a different takeaway, but that's our opinion on the film. We're just saying.